Hey, thanks so much for listening to the Ridge Community Church podcast. My name is John. I'm one of the pastors on staff at the Ridge, and our vision is to bring the hope of Jesus into every home. So as a piece of that, our goal each week is to bring you something that's hopeful and helpful. So subscribe to this podcast to make sure you don't miss any hopeful and helpful conversations. Hey everyone, and thanks for listening to this episode of the Ridge podcast. If you find today's episode hopeful and helpful, then please follow or subscribe, and then rate and review so that more people can find the conversation. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to give us a follow and turn on notifications so that you don't miss any conversations. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, then I want to let you know that unfortunately, due to some technical difficulties, there will not be a video portion for this episode, just the audio. Sorry about any inconvenience that might cause you. Now, I'm excited to share with all of you a conversation that I got to have with our guest services director at the Ridge, Rachel Schick. Rachel served in our guest services and in groups teams for several years before coming on staff and really brings some great insight into our topic today. One of the things that I discovered while researching for our series on deconstruction was just how many people mentioned that a part of the reason why they were deconstructing was because they felt burnt out, particularly due to serving in a way that really left them feeling overextended. So, how do you avoid becoming burnt out when you're serving? Well, Rachel shares her own story, some steps that you can take, and why seeing the big picture is so important. This is my conversation with Rachel. Well, hi, Rachel. Thanks for coming on to the Ridge podcast.
Hey, John. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I mean, we're smack dab in the middle of October as we're recording this, and I have to ask, do you have a favorite part of the fall in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I do actually. So what comes top of mind when you ask me that? School starts. And my kids love my kids, but I do like that school is back up and running, just to get a new rhythm and schedule going. But with fall in Wisconsin, I do like the change of weather, just a little bit cooler. I do like the leaves changing, just the change of season. I enjoy that. It's just a nice change of pace, after you've been in a season for a little while. So we like the pumpkin farm and stuff like that. So yeah, those are some of the things that I really like in fall.
I always feel like fall is, especially in Wisconsin, is just so beautiful, because the humidity kind of drops. And so it's just like, feels like a very comfortable temperature. The only thing about the fall is like those random days where it stops being fall and like tries to be winter. You know what I'm saying?
Like overnight.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I like fall too, because it's like you said, it's not too cold. You can still do a lot of things outside. So I feel like fall is short though. I feel like it just goes by super quick,
Yeah.
So we try to take advantage of it, but yeah, fall's great. I really enjoy fall.
Yeah. And this fall, we've been doing a pretty cool series that I've really enjoyed, Permission to Deconstruct, which has been all about, deconstruction and your faith and how do you do it in a healthy way. And it's been one that, we've researched a ton for. And as I was looking at, topics and how do we talk about, different podcast topics or things like that to go alongside and really help people through this. One of the things I read about a reason for why people would be deconstructing their faith was what they had called this like Christian burnout. And usually it related to like serving. And, Rachel, you've been you served for a long time, you served, and then now you're leading teams. Why do you think people experience this experience?
Yeah. It's more common than I think people realize or people kind of know. I think there's a lot of reasons why people would experience this Christian burnout, particularly with serving. Number one is I think that people just feel like they say yes, like they feel like they're letting God down, they're letting you down if they say no. I feel like sometimes a healthy serving rotation, I feel, is just a couple times a month. And there are people who like to jump in every week. I always caution against that. I feel like serving every week can just be a lot for people. So serving too much, and then in multiple areas, can definitely cause like Christian burnout. Just not setting boundaries. A while back when I first started, I felt like I couldn't say no to anything. I felt like whenever somebody asked me to do something serving at the Ridge, like I just felt like I had to say yes. And then it took a toll after a while. It just became like something I was doing versus it having meaning to me versus it being something important to why I'm doing this. So I just think that just taking on too much. And then, sometimes when people are serving, there's other things going on in their lives outside of the Ridge. They have their personal lives, their work lives. And so when things happen outside, sometimes, people may not really address or deal with those, and they just keep going and they keep serving, they keep doing this rhythm, and then, they can get burned out. I think when people lose the vision of why they're serving, I think that's easy to get spiritually burned out too. So there's just a lot of reasons for sure. And I think it's really important that, people kind of try to recognize those when it starts to feel different, when that passion is gone, that love is gone, when, we all said why, or we all said yes for a reason to serving. And it's because, we love Jesus and we want to do this for him. When we just start to feel like that is shifted on the inside or that we're losing that, we really should take a step back. So yeah, I just think there's a lot of reasons, taking on too much, I think, is probably top of mind for me.
Yeah. So, and maybe we can dive into that. You mentioned this idea of like almost saying yes to like these different areas instead of like having this focused approach. I think if I remember correctly, that was part of something that happened to you, right? Where you like were like, yes, 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 and like wearing all these different hats and doing all these different things. What got you to a place where you're able to say, you know what, I'm going to focus on this one thing?
Yeah, great question. So funny story, that did happen to me. And I was asked to have a conversations behind the scenes with some of the leadership at the Ridge at the time. And their intentions for this conversation was their care for me. And they like told me like point blank, like, like we're worried you're taking on too much. And, and so I didn't listen at first.
Yeah.
But no, so for me, I started to really feel it. So I was serving heavily in the groups world and I was serving heavily in the guest services world, where every single week, multiple times a week, I had things I was serving for those areas. And so for me, it started to take a mental toll where I could just feel that I didn't feel the same. I didn't have as much joy. I didn't have as much happiness in some of the things that I was doing. And I also was neglecting my own personal spiritual health. I thought I was like during those periods getting fed spiritually by doing what I was doing, serving, but that's just not enough, So when I started to neglect my own spiritual health, and then I was just kind of going through the motions, I took a step back because I kind of thought about it like, I'm not really doing anyone else a favor or helping them if all of me, heart, mind, body, soul, is into what I'm trying to do with serving. Like I can't lead a group, right? If I'm not, happy about it, if I see the vision of it. And so when I saw that it started to affect the way that I was serving, I just took a step back and I really prayed hard about it. And I just really focused on me spiritually. And I just talked to God and I just asked him to help me, like point me in a direction, please. And so then it came, he just revealed it to me and just showed me that I needed to just focus on this, so that's what really helped me. If it doesn't feel good on the inside, and if you feel those nudges, we really should pay attention to those, because we're not doing favors for anybody because we say yes all the time because we want to say yes. That's not always the best, healthiest option. We want to say yes because, we see the vision and the connection between like the kingdom building and what we're doing, So yeah, there was a period of time, John, where I was really overwhelmed that I almost stepped out altogether from serving from the Ridge, like entirely. And I didn't want to do that. So I figured the only way that I could stay healthy and serve to the maximum of the gifts that God gave me is if I just lessened it a little bit and realized that it's not like the more I serve, the more often I serve, the more points God's got marked up for me up there, it's. So I kind of just wrestled through a lot of those thoughts. And then I'm glad I made that decision and went one direction or the other, because when I focused on one area, it just was really good for me, because I could feel my spark back, my joy back, and I saw the vision of why I was doing what I was doing.
So that's such a healthy approach, and I mean, you're in a situation where I'm sure there was these like emotions that almost feel like you're letting somebody down, right? Because
Yeah. Yes.
the saying no is always, I feel like you're either really good at it or you're really bad at it, right? Typically is in my experience, you kind of sit in one of those camps. And um I think that there's something cool about recognizing that the bigger picture, and realizing that, there wasn't something necessarily wrong with you or anything like that, but it was just like, okay, I need to do this in a sustainable way to actually maximize the way that I can impact people for Jesus, and have it not be something that does burn you out,
Yeah, for sure.
I'm curious, you mentioned this idea of like connecting to the vision, connecting to the purpose. Why do you think that's important?
I think that's important because it helps us as an individual know that we have a direct impact to what God is trying to do. I feel like when we have a vision for serving and what we're doing, it gives it more meaning to us. I feel like it can be more personal to us. And I just feel like we can just serve in just a lot better way, because this isn't just like, some routine, like I said, going with the motions kind of thing. I mean, we're putting everything into what we're doing. So when we have a vision, we want to just serve as the best us, that God created, that God made. And so I think having vision is important because, it just lets people know their direct single impact of what we're doing and how important their role is. No matter what that role is, it's still important, So it's just, you want it to have meaning. You want it to just mean something. So vision, I think, is so incredibly important, because I think, with having a vision, I feel like people just, in my experiences, have served more like heartfelt, I guess. Just, like there's a lot more heart into it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And we've talked before previously about like using greeters as an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where there's a tremendous difference between understanding, I'm opening the door for somebody to come in to the Ridge, versus like, well, I am somebody's first experience with a smiling face that might know their name, entirely different experience and mindset of how you are helping represent Jesus and kind of further what we're trying to do to bring the hope of Jesus to people. So
yeah,
I love that connection.
That's a great example that you just used. So that's what I share with my teams. So when you use a greeter, right, they're not just a body holding a door and smiling. It's people walking through those doors. I share with teams that, what if the time that they walk through your door and you look at them and you smile at them and you say hi to them is the only time someone saw them all week long? That's life-changing for people. And so it has such a deeper meaning and impact when they know clearly, like, what that vision is. And so everyone's journey starts there, right? Everyone's journey starts by walking through the door sometimes. And so, yeah, for sure. It has a way bigger impact long-term.
I imagine somebody's listening and maybe they're in a serving capacity or something like that. And my hope for you as you're listening would be that when you serve, there is a vision that you're accomplishing. Like connecting to that purpose can be so powerful to maintain what you're doing, to continue in with your efforts, to know that you are making an impact.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing with the serving teams that I tell people, and I tell our teams, is that, every single role that we have on guest services, every single one matters. We can't do one without the other. And each one is just of equal importance, and so if someone comes in to serve, and I always say too, like, if it feels like God's not moving, it doesn't mean he's not moving. Like, trust it. And and so I do think another thing, John, as we talk about this, is why people feel this whole burnout, and with this serving and having meaning, when people don't realize the importance and value that they bring to the team, when they're not appreciated, they feel like they're not noticed. I think for sure it can, if they feel like they're overlooked, I think that can have a huge impact on people questioning if it matters that they're there serving, And so I really try to do that too with our teams. It's just to remind everybody just how important each and every role is. And so that, that we are there and we're all for the same vision, purpose. All of that,
Yeah. So earlier we chatted a little bit about how there's this concept of like, you don't want to overextend yourself and say yes to all these things that are great.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But at the same time, right, you want to know that each of these things isn't just a box to check, but has a purpose behind it. Right.
Sure.
So how do you say no to these other areas, right? So that you can maximize your purpose in one area? Does that make sense?
Sure. Yep. So, we all have spiritual gifts, right? So we all know ourselves. So we all know what we can do best sometimes, as far as if it's, greeting or ushering. So I feel like if somebody to maximize like their spiritual gifts to purpose, I feel like people should be serving in a role that complements how they were made. And so like if I'm serving in a role, for instance, that doesn't fit my personality or doesn't fit the gifts that I have, I wouldn't serve in a role like that then. I think it makes sense where somebody's going to connect deeper to the meaning and purpose of what they're doing when they're serving in a role that fits them. And so, what we do with serving, when somebody signs up to join our teams, we go through an orientation process. And I feel like that orientation process is so incredibly critical because we talk through all of the different teams that are available to serve on. And then we talk through what each of those roles look like. And so people kind of have an idea or we help guide them, as in having a conversation with them, what would be the best fit for them. So I don't think it's healthy for people, to serve, just to say yes, especially in a role that maybe wouldn't be something that would be that they would their first choice anyhow,
Yeah.
I feel like when we're serving in a role that is comfortable to who we are and our skills, I feel like we're just going to connect a lot more with that role and it's just going to work all the way inside out,
Yeah. I'm curious. And, I think just based on like how long you've been able to serve and lead, you probably have a good perspective on this. How do you keep that like fresh? So how do you keep serving? Because you find your gifting area, right? And you're serving in that capacity. And we talked about reconnecting with the purpose, but is there anything else that you'd think that like, how do you keep that experience like fresh and still meaningful?
So, yeah, I guess great example of that and answering that question is, so I've had team members, and this has happened many times, who come on to serve. They sign up to serve, they join our teams, we welcome them, and then they serve in an area for a period of time, let's say 3 months, 4 months. We check in regularly with our teams. And so I'm grateful that our teams that we have been very open and forthcoming, and they'll say, you know what, this just isn't working. This just doesn't feel right. This just doesn't, so we have encouraged people to move around, and we offer it, so if somebody starts out in one area and you feel that the expectations and what that role entails is just not long-term complementing to how you are, then we encourage them in another area. And so I've had many people kind of move around until they feel like they've found like their spot. And so we have regular check-ins with all of our teams, team members to team leads to coaches. And so, and you kind of just, I think when you stay connected to your teams, you just get a good sense for how things are going and how people are. And so if there's things noticed that maybe, another area could be more beneficial, then, we just kind of move people around. We encourage it. And we let people know right from the beginning that they're more than welcome to explore and try multiple areas, because we want people serving in an area that's going to maximize those spiritual gifts more than anything,
Yeah.
So we definitely don't want people just coming in to serve just to serve. So we try to support that as much as we can that way.
Do you think that there's something to the idea of like growing in your serving, meaning like, I don't know, being a little bit stretched and then like you grow and you kind of get better at what you're doing and you like stretched a little bit more. Is there any element to that in what you do?
Yeah, there is. And so what comes to mind when you ask that would be somebody who steps into a leadership role.
Mm,
So
yeah.
you have somebody that serves in one area for some time, and then God continues to put it on like mind and heart about that person growing and taking steps. So there's been times where I've had an I see in you conversation with team members where I invite them into leadership, and I could tell they didn't want to, and they were real hesitant. I didn't
Yeah.
push them, but they could feel God pushing them. And
Mm.
so people, I mean, some team members have taken that step and they have stretched themselves and they have grown, and they look back and they're glad that they did.
Yeah.
I think also in not talking leadership, if somebody's serving in the same role, but maybe there's additional responsibilities they can take on, or there's
Yeah.
something new that they can add to that role. Sometimes people are scared to do that, but they'll step into it and lean into that because they feel it's something to grow them,
Yeah.
So yeah, that does happen often. And I love when that happens.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, going back to kind of you were sharing some of your story and you recognized in yourself like you weren't able to kind of, I would say, like dive into your own personal spiritual journey as much because of how like feeling overextended or whatever.
Mhm.
I imagine that can be a pretty good uh indicator for people, like if they're serving and maybe they're not feeling as connected to it previously, that might be a little bit indicator as well that maybe their own personal disciplines, their own personal time with Jesus might need to be refreshed as well. Would you
Mhm.
have like when you kind of made that decision that you were going to spend a little bit more time focusing on that as well? Was there anything that you found that was helpful in that part of your journey?
Yeah. So when I think of my personal spiritual discipline during that process, one of the things particularly that helped me, I wanted to develop some healthy spiritual rhythms on my own. So what I would do would every morning I would set an alarm on my phone and I would title it Time with Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
when my alarm would go off, I'd look at it, and I stayed consistent to that to the same time every day,
Mm.
um, that was healthy for me to just start that process, that just repetitive routine, because then it got to a point where it's just something that you naturally do.
Yeah.
I just was very intentional on staying in God's word. I joined a Bible study completely outside of everything at the Ridge, like
Mm.
just with other people, like just connected to a Bible study, which
Yeah.
was extremely helpful. And so, yeah, I mean, those things
Something
for
you
me.
weren't leading, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Mm.
yes. I was a participant and I loved it,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so it was nice, So for me, that's what I feel like I needed.
Yeah.
I needed to be in something that I could grow spiritually, I could get deeper with God, and just kind of just get back on track, and with just my spiritual life so that I would be like where I wanted to be serving,
Yeah.
So yeah, so personal disciplines, those are a couple of things that just stick out that I did that helped me.
How do you feel like that time impacted your ability to serve well?
I think it impacted it a lot. It just, God kind of reminded me what I'm doing, what he created me for. I think I feel just blessed and fortunate that God has made it very clear to me, I feel, of what my spiritual gifts are,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to leading and serving. And so it was just the reassurance from him that I kind of felt bad stepping down, stepping back. I did, and I think everyone
Yeah.
would feel that way. And God gave
Yeah.
me the reassurance. He doesn't want us to feel bad. He wants us to serve like with our whole heart, for him. And so I just got that reassurance from him, and just that, I didn't fail. It's not that I can't do it. It just wasn't healthy,
Mm.
So I just think spending that time spiritually in my own personal life, it just helped me realize those things. Cause when you're just go, 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 it's easy to not think about that,
Yeah.
and you start thinking all these, bad thoughts that you just like, you're not good. And like, you're a failure, and so God just reminded me like, no, you're not. Like, let's just slow down here. And, so it really helped me a lot, like a lot. So yeah, it was good.
So good. Do you have
Yeah.
any closing thoughts for people as we kind of wrap up this conversation? Somebody maybe they're kind of going through some of this process as well, where they're thinking, wow, I feel burnt out on serving, and maybe they've connected a big part of their faith identity
Yeah.
with this serving. Any encouragement for them?
Yeah, for sure. So just two quick things. If somebody is serving and somebody's feeling this tension and they're wrestling with it, if you go to your leader and you tell them you want to take a break, it's okay. Like your leader is not going to cut you off forever. Like there's always a spot for people to come back, and leaders actually like that. That's a sign of spiritual maturity when you can come forward and say, you know what, like I'm wrestling with this and I just need to step down. You're not a failure. You're not letting anyone down. And it's actually a really good thing. And then it's okay to say no. I mean, if you get asked to serve in a certain area or position for an event or whatever the case is, and you say no, it's okay. You'll get asked again. You will. And I don't want people to feel or think that if they say no, that they're never going to get asked again or never going to get looked at again, because that's not true. So it's okay. And I think that it's a sign of maturity. And I know that the leaders that I've happened to serve with at the Ridge, we all embrace that. I mean, we really do. And so, just make sure that you keep your spiritual life, your spiritual health. It has to stay like consistent too while you're serving. You don't want to fill that just with your serving time. So yeah. So when people step down from guest services, I always tell them, there's a spot here waiting for you whenever you want to come back. And that's very true. So
yeah. And I think you exemplified that well with your own story, right? Where you took that time when you did step down out of an area, your response wasn't, okay, now this is just a break where, that space is not filled. It was, hey, now I'm going to be a part of this Bible study that's going to help me grow in my faith. And I'm going to get these rhythms down. So you use that space, I think, to kind of just grow your faith. And so I think that would be my encouragement for somebody that does say, I need some space and some time. Use that like as a opportunity to grow your faith.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing with me, for talking on this topic. And it's so helpful. I think such a chance to just help people feel refreshed and understand a little bit more about how they can really stay and keep their faith fresh. So thanks, Rachel.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, John. I appreciate it.
Well, that was my conversation with Rachel. I think she outlined some really helpful things that show us both how to avoid burnout while serving and how to heal if we are experiencing it. Making sure that you're maintaining a healthy pace while serving and really leaving space to grow your own connection with God are really key. And don't sleep on the importance of understanding the purpose behind why you serve either. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Ridge Podcast. And make sure to follow and subscribe so that you don't miss any hopeful and helpful conversations.